Dear viewers of CCTV, my name is Basalamo. I'm the journalist from CCTV. I'm now at one of the camps of the Mount Qomolangma at an altitude of 4,300 meters. Earlier this morning, we have set a new record about the utilization of a floating airship for the atmospheric observation. We have invited Mr. Zhang to give us more details about this mission. So first of all, please say hi to everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here to talk with you. I'm from the Aerospace Information Research Institute of CAS. My name is Zhang Taihua. In today's mission, I'm in charge of the balancing equipment. So could you please tell us something more about this floating airship? That is the floating airship. Last night, with this Jimu #1 floating airship of the Type 3, we have set a new world record. And this floating airship has just accomplished this mission. If you have followed the peak mission on the 4th of May, you must know that 13 climbers of the mountains, they have succeeded with the mission of summiting the Mount Qomolangma. And on the peak of the mountain, they have set up several installations for the scientific expedition purposes. When they come back to our base camp at the altitude of 4,300 meters, we have congratulated everyone. And last night, we have released this floating airship. And when this floating airship completed its own mission and came back to our base camp, we have congratulated this floating airship. With a health check, we would like to see what is the current status with the floating airship, if every part of it is still working very well. Last night, from the altitude of 4,300 meters, we started the releasing work of this floating airship. And later on, we can see that the floating airship started to rise until the altitude of 7,000 meters and then above 9,000 meters. We have to continue with our follow-up health check for this floating airship. Today would be a day of a break for our floating airship, and we have to run all sorts of tests to see if every part of it is still in very good status. And inside this floating airship, we have used the helium gas and also the normal gas. We have the normal gas and also the helium gas. With the helium gas, we can make sure that the airship can float up. And with the extra part of the air, we make sure that there is the balance. Because when it goes up in the sky, then there would be the difference with the pressure of the atmosphere. So with the normal air inside, we can guarantee the whole size and also the shape and also the normal function of the floating airship. How many times have you ever visited this place? It's my second visit to the Mount Qomolangma. I have visited during 2018 trip. And this time, again, I came here for the new mission. So last time when you were here for the scientific expedition, how different was that from today's mission? And what's your feeling about the two missions? Of course, there are two different missions. In 2018, we came only with very simple facilities. It's more like a trial experimentation. Through our mission in 2018, we started to have the greater picture of the whole area to gain some basic knowledge about this area. For example, for the altitude above 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000, or even more heights, in recent years, we have studied a lot about this high altitude atmosphere. And this time, when we came to this environment again and we run the experiment with our floating airship, we are very confident. We are sure about our technologies. Last night, we have also met a lot of challenges, for example, very low temperature. And starting by earlier morning, by 1 o'clock, by 1 a.m., we have already started a very close observation. For this region, for this spot, for the section of the height, especially above 6,000, 7,000, and 8,000 meters of altitude, we know that sometimes you can see the turbulences of the gas in the atmosphere, so we have to run the observation in real time. Earlier this morning, until 4:40 a.m., our floating airship reached the altitude of 9,032 meters. That is a record high altitude for the floating airship for scientific expedition. So could you please give us more explanation about the functions of our floating airship? The volume of this floating ship is very huge, with 9,060 cubic meters. And now, because we are standing and working at a very high altitude environment, and usually we have some breathing problems, and it's also very challenging for our floating airship. This time during the release, we have to bear in mind the parties that we have to serve. With our floating airship, there are different chambers of air for the balance considerations. In the middle, there's the chamber for the energy. It's like the energy supply for the whole installation. What about the navigation power? This time we have used the battery of the lithium. We have used our floating airship to do the observation of the sections of the mountains. In the future, there will also be other missions. For example, at the same height of the altitude, we do the other kinds of observation. By then, we have to change the other kinds of source of power. This time for the equipment, they have captured a lot of data. Do we have a real-time transmission of the data? Yes, of course. We have used a lot of elements, for example, the isotone, and also the other elements and equipment to help us to do the real-time transmission of the data. And not only with the transmission, we can even do some preliminary analysis of those data collected freshly by our floating airship. Because at such an altitude, it's the first time for us to reach such a height of 9,032 meters. During my mission in 2018, we have even used the yacht to carry our equipment. And it's very difficult by then for us to go to a very high altitude. But this time we have this floating airship, so very quickly we can have this real-time transmission of the data. And we also have invited our academicians and other experts to read these data in real time. And what about the anchor part? Talking about this anchor part, we have overcome lots of difficulties. First of all, I'd like to talk about the whole region of Mount Qomolangma. Why is it so challenging to work in this region? From Lhasa City and Rikaze City, we have very good road conditions. However, if we want to come to this region, then you have to follow the mountainary roads in a zigzag forms. It's very challenging for us to travel. In order to get our anchor vehicle here, we have overcome so many difficulties. Actually, we have put up the whole parts, the 4 parts of this anchor vehicle. You can see there are the crane parts and also the main body and also the other assembly parts. We cannot bring the whole machine here. We have to, first of all, divide them into different parts, and then we can do the reassembly of all the 4 parts here in place. That's why we have overcome that bad road condition and also the turning roads inside the mountains. You have also worked very hard during the preliminary stage of the mission. Yes. In talking about the site, I would like to add up some more information. Maybe we can turn a little bit our camera. Over there towards the southwest region, you can see a valley with the water coming from the melting glaciers. And over there, you can see another valley from the Mount Qomolangma. And there is one peak called the Peak of Camel. For our Type 3 Jimu #1 floating airship, it has the total length of more than 50 meters. If we want to turn around this floating airship on the ground, we need to find a place at least can allow a length of 100 meters plus. So in order to invite our floating airship to this area, first of all, we have to find such a widespread and also plain area to put the airship. And nearby, we have also brought a lot of equipment. During the experimentation, we need guaranteeing conditions. For example, towards the eastern direction, we have the emergency response generator of the power, and we also have some other cabins. We also have the tents for people to take a break and have some sleep. And yesterday, we have also set up the tent for our headquarters of command. At such a high altitude, you have to put the floating airship to flight. And at the same time, you're also setting a new world record. What kind of challenges have you encountered and overcome? For the challenges, there are 2 categories. First of all, the known ones, and the second type, the unknown ones. For the known ones, I believe that you have some aspiration for the Mount Qomolangma. At the same time, you also have the fear for this high altitude plateau environment. We have breathing problems, and also the density of the atmosphere is very low. And here we are also facing very complicated weather conditions. All those are known risks and challenges because we know them in advance, so we are fully prepared to overcome those difficulties. Apart from all that, we're also facing with the unknown challenges. For example, at such a high altitude, you also have to rise the floating airship to even greater height. There's no previous record to follow. You cannot find the predecessors' research results. We are facing those new tasks and challenges because there's no one that has already done the research before us. So this time we are the first to solve all those unknown problems. And when we are here, we are relying on ourselves. In 3 days' time, we have completed the tasks of tests and preliminary trials. Previously, before the official launching of this mission, we have already set a very solid foundation. And that's why we have succeeded with this mission. All the obstacles we have encountered are already expected in advance, and we are fully prepared. For our floating airship, what about the highlights and also the innovative points about this design? We can see this streamlined design. That is a very classic design. However, when we use an airship at the sea environment or inside the mountains, it will be different in design. We have to adapt the design of the floating airship to the local environment. For example, for the head section and for the tail part, we have to make sure that this prototype can be better adapted to this plateau environment. At the same time, we have also used the wind hole to do the experiment. The wind tunnel experiment would help us to discover whether we can use the best angle to operate our floating airship and finally put it to a very high level of altitude. Of course, I cannot say that it's already a very perfect model, but still we are very proud of what it has already accomplished. According to the requirements of the second round of Tibetan region scientific expedition, especially in the southern slope of the Mount Qomolangma, we should be able to do the multiple spots of observation and throughout the year. How can we better satisfy the needs of our country to do the aerospace research? And we also consider the Mount Qomolangma and also the Tibetan Plateau as large as the Tower of Water for all the rivers running in Asia. We have to do our job well so that we can have satisfying results coming out from this scientific expedition. For all the equipments attached to the floating airship, they can help to transmit the information in real time back to our side. There are different chambers. Later on, I could show you more details about them. There are also payloads parts. During the process up and down, we would make sure that with all the payloads, the floating airship could reach to the expected height. And later on, when they are floating at a certain height of altitude, they can start to complete their job of observation and monitoring. Good morning, sir. So on the screen, we have the data. What can we read from the data? So this is one of the interface of monitoring. There are different zones. For example, here you can see the rising speed. We have attached great importance to that figure, to that indicator. Because the rising speed is closely correlated with the total duration of the rise. We don't want the floating airship to rise up too quickly or too slowly, just at a moderate speed. And also the altitude is one other important indicator to follow. And also the height from the ground, as well as the pressure and the battery status. We also have to keep an eye on all of those indicators. Imagine there's a person coming from the plain area to the mountain area to the plateau. Then immediately to measure his health status, we have to check his pressure of the blood. With the floating airship, it's the same mentality. We have to check the different chambers' pressure. We also have to check for mankind if there's the fever, if there's other abnormal symptoms, and it's the same thing with our floating airship. And here we also have a switch. What about the difference of the pressure? Now, according to the data, is it a normal one or abnormal one? Of course, that is a normal one. If it is abnormal, then I would be busy fixing the problem, then I would not be able to talk to you anymore. Now we can allow a difference of pressure of 200 pa. Usually in the afternoon in this region, we can expect to see strong winds. We have to make sure that the pressure with the floating airship is within a moderate and rational range. Now we already had the sunrise. There is the ventilation system working with the floating airship in order to readjust the pressure level. Weather conditions are very important, and we have to consider that during our mission. Previously, we have already carried out 2 rounds of experiments. So what can be considered as a perfect weather condition for the rising up of the floating airship? For the floating airship, the friction level is very low, especially thanks to our Type 3 floating airship. It can withstand a wind speed of 25 meters per second. However, this floating airship would be a little bit fragile in front of the strong wind during the taking off period. When it's already in the air, when it's rising up, it's like a man has reached this adulthood. It's much stronger. So we have to pay attention to the starting period with the taking off. And again, I've mentioned before that we are now standing at a valley area, and surrounding us a lot more valleys. Towards the western part, some more river valleys. Some days ago, we have made the prudent decision to wait for some more time. So finally, last night and earlier this morning, we have completed this task. We have the density of the wind at 7 to 8 degrees. And radiation is also a problem. What kind of innovative measures you have applied, or what kind of innovative design you have used in our floating ship in order to cope with the ultraviolet radiation and also the strong wind? We believe that the destiny of individuals is closely connected with the destiny of the country. Since the rising up of the floating airship is closely correlated with weather conditions, was the weather last night. Every day in the afternoon, we could experience strong winds. And last night, by midnight, gradually the strong winds have died down. There are 3 chambers with our floating airship, so we have run another round of health check, 1 chamber after another. And by 1:26 a.m. earlier this morning, we started this official launching work of the floating airship. And all the process corresponds very well with our previous design. Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. I'll just let you go back to your working site. And dear viewers, we will also keep you updated. That is all for today's live streaming program. Thank you.